guys, how's it going? Laura with Garden Answer. In today's video, I want to give you a care guide on aloe vera plants. So there are a lot of varieties of aloe out there, but I'm going to be talking specifically about Aloe barbadensis, which is your traditional medicinal aloe. And I wanted to do it on this specific plant because they are so readily available. You can find them at most garden centers, box stores, even your grocery store. These are the type that you can cut leaves off and use the gel for like cuts and burns and things like that. So there are 10 different points I want to talk about. We're going to go ahead and put them on the screen with the time signature where you can find the beginning of each different point. That way, if you want to just learn about something specific, you can skip right forward to that part of the video, or you can hang out with me for the whole thing if you want. So the first point is light exposure. Now this is going to vary depending on where you live and whether or not you're keeping your aloe inside or outside. But typically, if you've got your aloe inside, you want to give it as much light as possible. The only thing you want to watch for is not to put it up really close to glass, especially if you've got it positioned in a west-facing window, because that glass can intensify the sun and can burn the leaves of your aloe plant. If you're keeping your aloe outside, you actually will treat it a little bit differently. You want to protect it from any really scorching afternoon sun, but you do want to make sure it gets a little bit of morning sun, like maybe 2 to 3 hours, which is different than your other succulents you might have outside, which can typically take 4 to 6 hours of morning sun. But then, just make sure it gets bright indirect light for the rest of the day. And again, it will depend on what climate you live in. In more mild climates, they can take more sun. In really hot, dry climates, they will need a little bit more protection. But you will know if your plant is getting stressed if the leaves start to turn orange and start to burn. The second point is temperature, and aloes do best in a temperature range from about 55 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is I think about 13 to 27 degrees Celsius. They live natively in zones 9 through 11, which is really far from my zone. We live in zone 5, so it gets way too cold in the winter for aloes. So typically, if you live in a colder climate, you want to make sure that you bring them inside before frost happens in the fall. Point number 3 is soil type, and aloes, just like the rest of your succulents and cactus, prefer a soil mix that drains really quickly because they don't like to have a lot of moisture accumulating around their roots. So I just use a spoma cactus mix. You do not want to use either garden soil or regular potting mix because those two types of soil will hold on to way too much moisture and can easily rot your plant. Speaking of soil, that actually brings me to point number 4, which is about repotting your aloe. They actually do not prefer to be repotted very often. They like to be a little bit pot bound. So what I like to do is just pop my aloe out of its container about once a year and take a look at the roots. If it looks like it's more roots than it is soil, then it's probably time to repot. So you want to make sure that you pick a container that has drainage to keep your plant happy. This little guy actually doesn't need to be repotted, but I just picked it up and I want to get it out of its plastic nursery pot into a nicer container. Point number 5 is watering, and I think that this one is probably the most important thing to nail down because I think overwatering is the #1 reason people fail with aloe vera. Now, how much water you give and how often is totally dependent on where you have your aloe, whether or not it's inside, outside, whether you have super hot temperatures and a lot of wind, or if you've got it inside where it's a little bit more humid. It just depends. The best way to know is to do a finger test where you stick your finger in the soil and you just wait till that top 1 to 2 inches of soil has dried out before giving it more water. I typically keep mine inside all year round, and so I give them water about every 14 days during the growing season, and then in the fall and winter months I kind of back off on that and go every maybe 3 to 4 weeks because their plant is not utilizing that much water. You'll know that your aloe is getting way too much water if the leaves start getting like kind of squishy and they lighten in color and they'll start to flop over the sides. That's usually the first sign that your plant is being overwatered. If you're underwatering your plant, not giving it quite enough, the leaves will start to get thinner because they're having to utilize their own moisture to survive. So their leaves will get kind of shriveled and thin. Point number 6 is on fertilizing, and aloes are actually very low maintenance in this category. They don't like to have that much fertilizer. They don't need it. Typically, I will give them a shot in the spring about March, and then 1 to 2 months later, I'll give them fertilizer again. So typically May, and then one more time in July. And then I don't give them any more fertilizer for the rest of the year because usually toward the end of summer into fall, they're starting to power down and they're not needing food to grow. Point number 7 is on flowering, and aloes do flower on occasion. It's not super consistent, but usually it'll happen late winter, early spring. They'll come up with these nice little stalks with yellow bell-shaped flowers that are really pretty. And just enjoy them while they're blooming, and then when they're all done and all dried up, you can follow that stalk all the way back down to the base of the plant and just clip it off with your pruners. The 8th point is about propagating, and it's really easy to do. So this big beautiful aloe that I have right here is actually producing a little baby shoot. We call them pups. They produce them off their main stalk. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to reach down in there and try to pop it off as close to the stalk as I can of the mother stalk. I just repotted this aloe, so I really don't want to take the whole thing out of its container. and upset the balance. So I'm gonna try to do it this way. It is probably better if you take the whole thing out and kind of remove some of the soil so you see exactly what you're doing. But I can feel pretty good down in there. We'll pop this off. You wanna remove as much of the stalk as you can. So this little pup looks really good. I got a couple inches of stalk there, which is great. And then I've got this other little baby right here. Not as much stalk, but we should still be okay. So at this point, you can do one of two things. You can let him sit out for a day or two and let this cut end callus over and dry so that no moisture enters into that stalk, which can cause rot. Or you can go ahead and pot them up, and you just want to make sure to wait to water them for about 5 to 7 days because there's still oxygen in that soil and the end will still dry out, but you don't want to introduce water right away. So I'm going to show you how to repot it up today. You want to use your cactus succulent mix. So I'm just going to pour a little bit into this container right here, almost all the way to the top, making a huge mess. Okay, and I do want to pack that soil down pretty firmly, and then I'm just going to make a nice deep hole in there, and that's where I will take my aloe and I'll push it down in here. Let's see, I'm going to remove a tiny bit of the stalk so it fits nicely. And then I'm going to just pack this cactus mix around the base of the aloe. So sometimes your aloes are a little bit top heavy because they are not holding on by anything. There's no roots in there holding them into the soil. So a really good thing to do is just to grab a little bit of rock top dress to put on top of the soil, and that'll create a little bit of weight on top of it so that the aloe won't move around. So I'm gonna go grab a few little rocks. Okay, so I'm gonna hold the aloe in place and just pop a few little rocks around it. And look at that. It actually looks tidier too to have the soil covered up. So this little baby will start to form roots in about a month or two. Point number 9 is how to harvest your aloe vera so that you can use it. It's really easy to do. You can either cut 1 to 2 inch sections off of your leaf and then let that leaf heal over and then harvest more later, or you can harvest the entire leaf all at the same time. So all you do is you go in with a pair of scissors, you cut the leaf, and then you can see this gel right here. You can squeeze that leaf. Look at that gel coming out. This is good to use on scars, burns, rashes, acne, psoriasis. I mean, you can Google everything that you can use aloe gel on. There's a ton of different uses. Little word of warning though, it stinks. It smells kind of like body odor. Blah. And the last point is about toxicity of aloe plants. So these should not be consumed orally. Like, they should not be going in your mouth, either pets or humans. A really large amount can be really toxic. But even in smaller quantities, they can be a little unpleasant. They can cause kidney issues. So it's just a good idea to keep these ones out of reach of pets or kids. So that's it, you guys. That is my care guide on aloe vera. I've been growing these plants for quite a number of years, and I've had pretty good luck with them. I think that they're really, really pretty plants, just not only to look at, but I love the fact that there's a practical aspect to them as well. I would love to know what your experience has been with aloes. Leave me a comment down below, and I know that a lot of people like to get in the comments. We learn a lot from each other. So leave your experience down below. Would love to read that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.